Mm.
All right. Well, tonight we're going to talk about mobility, flexibility, and stability. The difference, why they're all important, what we need them for, what the heck does any of that mean? And I know that we just muted everybody, but I'd like to ask, and you can just unmute yourself. Like, this is the talk about, have you ever bent down or recently bent down to pick something up and you're like, oh shit, why does that hurt? Or that was a lot harder than it used to be. Or you rolled over in bed and you're like, ow, what the hell was that? Who's recently had that experience?
I've bent down and it was a lot harder than it used to be.
Why, Nicole, I didn't even see you pop in there.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to miss it, though, for real.
Well, I'm glad you joined. So, bent down, where did you feel that pain? Or that, whatever that.
It's in my lower back. It feels like it's in between.
Okay, so bent down to pick up something, felt it in your lower back. Who else?
I feel tight everywhere. Like you could probably bounce a quarter off my back. Not because I'm so muscular.
Okay. All right, Eric, I saw you raise your hand. What about you?
Waking up and my hips hurt, but I didn't do legs.
All
So
right,
normally
that's
they
a
only
really
hurt when
good
I do
one.
legs. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? But I made it through. Just had the foam roll before I did anything.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, all of that is totally normal as we get older, as you work out, and sometimes we have those feelings without even working out, without doing anything. So what does all of that mean? What's the difference between these three things? So mobility, flexibility, stability, they are the foundational movements, right? The components of how your body moves and how you feel throughout your everyday daily activities. Improving these three things, all not just one, but all three of them, enhances how you move not only through your workouts, but in your regular everyday life, how you feel when you get up from your chair, how you feel when you get out of bed, all of those things. The focus of this presentation today is just to talk about the difference between those things and how do we train or work on each of them separately to focus on getting all of it a well-rounded situation, because it all matters, right? So why does it matter? Aches and pains, we just talked about that. Some of you have bent over and you're like, my back hurts, or I get up and my hips hurt, right? Those aches and pains, they stem from how we're moving rather than what we do. You moved in a weird way, maybe when you bent over. Your body wasn't accustomed to doing that, or you've been stationary for a long time and now you moved and you felt that. So it's not necessarily what we are doing, it's how we are moving our body throughout the day and throughout these movements. And as we compensate for things, is the source of those aches and pains. So the benefit of improving those things is that you can get out of bed without all that stiffness. That the few steps that you take getting out of bed every day, and you've got to kind of bend over and take a few steps before you could stand up straight, or your feet are hurting or whatever in the morning, right? Sitting, a lot of us these days sit in our chairs. If you have a desk job and when you get up, your hips are hurting, right? So those are all factors of this something lacking in one of these things, if not all of them, right? So the focus is, of course, moving better, not necessarily moving more. There's little things that we can do to make this better. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean a whole bunch of extra stretching. And we're going to talk about that as we go along. Contributing factors, like I said, sitting for a long time in your chair, driving for a long time, those long road trips, if you're a driver for your job, or you have a long commute, you're going to have these aches and pains because it's repetitive things or lack of movement that are going to accumulate over time and affect your body. Keep going the wrong way on my mouse. I got a new mouse, so I keep rolling the thing the wrong direction. All right, so the stretching, this helps you stretch. Mobility lets you move freely, and stability keeps you steady. So flexibility is, the stretching piece of it. The mobility is how you're moving, and the stability is, can you keep your body stable? Can you actually hold yourself up? They all work together to help you keep feeling and moving your best. All of them significantly impact how you function throughout your daily life, in your workouts, and even while at rest. Sometimes you can't even relax because something hurts, or you're still feeling some throbbing, or you've got some swelling. So even just sitting and trying to relax, you can't do that when things are inflamed as a result of some immobility throughout your day as you were moving. So lacking in any of those things is going to result in some discomfort throughout all kinds of different activities. So your range of motion, your range that you can go with your muscles, that's the flexibility. Stability provides the control for your body as you are trying to maintain how you stand and how you're doing something. And then mobility ensures that you're safe through those movements. And we have to make sure that those are all balanced. So flexibility refers to how far your muscle can stretch. So when we talk about, I have to stretch, that's flexibility. Sometimes the stretching is not actually what we need to do because that's not what the problem is. But flexibility, the bare definition is how far the muscle can actually stretch. Benefits, of course, improving how loose and comfortable your muscles feel, tight hamstrings, tight triceps, like whatever that might be, stiff calves a lot after walking, tight shoulders because we round as we're in the desk, like we're sitting here, we've got, we get all of those tight muscles in the back of our neck, which cause, that contributes to headaches and chronic fatigue and things like that. And then the limitations of your flexibility, if you're limited in your range of motion, that's going to then play into, are you actually mobile, right? Can you actually be mobile? If it's weak, and as we're going through strength, as the mobility happens, if the flexibility is not there, that's where we start to see the issues with the injuries. And stretching alone doesn't always just fix the pain that you get from a tight muscle. Mobility, that's that usable movement. It's about how well your joints move with control and coordination. Oh, that picture got a little bit distorted. The difference between mobility and flexibility, mobility expands upon flexibility by incorporating that capacity to actively and effectively control movement across the range of motion. What does that mean? That's a lot of words right there, right? So being able to have the stretch, like if you have those long ranges of motion, you can stretch all the way down, but you can't control that stretch. Sometimes then you get that hyperflexibility, and hyperflexibility without control is also not a good thing. So just having that long range of motion, but without the mobility to control it, that's not a good thing either. Practical examples of mobility are going to be, can you squat down to pick something up without pain? Are you flexible enough to bend down to get it? And then can you stand back up through that range of motion without pain? Reaching overhead, getting something off of a shelf or off of out of the top of the cabinet or off the top of the closet, being able to reach up and control that movement down. Great if you can reach up there, but if you can't control your joints through them range of motion on the way down, you're going to drop whatever it is that you're attempting to grab. being able to turn comfortably. We've all had the situation where you go to put your seatbelt on and ouch, that impingement hurts. Or you go to look behind you to back out of the driveway or to make, to back in somewhere and your neck is kind of weird. That's mobility. It's not necessarily flexibility. And so those two things, different, all kind of go together. You can be flexible with poor mobility.
Is that why a chiropractor is important?
Chiropractors are important for alignment of the spine. So there's a lot of different things that are happening with spine alignment, and everything is connected. So can a chiropractor help in situations of like tight muscles and things that are out of balance? Yes. But this flexibility, mobility, like unless they are a chiropractor that also practices in stretching or acupuncture or something like that, aligning your spine over time is a good thing, but it's not necessarily going to improve your flexibility and mobility just with an adjustment.
Sounds good.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions before we keep going? All right, usable movement. This is the mobility. Great if you can reach it, but can you control it? So it's about how they move. I already did this. Sorry, went backwards. The definition of stability involves the ability to control the movement and protect your joints during activity. Can you step up and down stairs? Can you stand on one foot? Do you have the core stability to be able to hold something out in front of you or to pick something up from the shelf and bring it down? You still need stability in your core in order to be able to move through that range of motion. So it involves your ability to control the movement and protect your joints during that activity. If you're flexible enough to get there and you have a little bit of control, but you have through the mobility, but you don't have any stability, for example, you bend over and you can get there and there's no pain and you go to stand up, but your core is a little wonky. So now maybe you're moving in a weird way because you don't have core stable muscles. Your core can't hold yourself in place. So now you have to overcompensate with some back muscles in order to hold yourself in place. And that compensating is where is what we want to try to avoid, the overcompensation of some muscles to protect some of the other things, which will cause over time. And Scott, I know we're going to talk about this with you because we've already discussed the compensating and what happens when your body has to overcompensate because you're lacking in one of these things. So practical examples of stability, like I said, balancing on one leg to put on your shoes. You have to balance on one leg unless you're sitting to put on your pants one leg at a time, right? Everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. If you don't have the stability to stand up and put your pants on while you're standing, now you have to sit down to put your clothes on every time. So that stability is what you need, whether it's stability through your ankles, through your feet, through your core. That's all very important for functional everyday activities. Never mind the stability that you need through being safely able to move through a squat and then move through a squat with weight or do a deadlift or do anything where you're pushing overhead. If you don't have those that core stability or the stability in your ankles, you're going to really struggle with some of the movements, not just in your workouts, but in your regular everyday activity. And Nicole, this is where that alignment and strength comes in. Stability and supporting your spine, having those stable muscles, those little bitty, tiny, intricate muscles that nobody likes to train because it's boring shit. That's what is important for us to maintain that proper alignment. You can go to the chiropractor every day and get an adjustment, but if your muscles aren't stable enough, you're not going to stay in alignment. You're just going to go right back to the way that you were. Your muscles are going to be off. So those stabilizing muscles, whether it be in your core, your back, your ankles, your hips, your whatevers, those need to be strong. We have to focus on that stability to prevent pain and injury. Has anybody had a surgery on, let's just say, one part of their body or another, like one side, and through physical therapy, they focused a lot on stability, like that one leg stability, or, what kind of exercises and movements do you think you were doing in your PT that helped with this? Anybody have an example?
I do.
Hi,
I've
Karina.
had both of my Achilles tendons detached and reattached. 10 and 10 don't recommend. They had me doing stability exercises where I'd have to stand and just hold my foot out like I was going to step on a big box and just hold it there just to get the ankle and all of the muscles around the ankle and to get stability on my heels. And it was I mean it worked, but as kind of a consequence I have hyper flexible ankles, so I do sprain my ankles a lot. But the other thing that happened was now it's really painful to walk any real long distances because the tendons are extremely tight because they don't recover the same way, like once they're detached, they shorten, and then even though you reattach them, they still hurt from time to time.
Sure. So your stability exercises that they were giving you in PT, those kinds of, especially through a surgery like that, which is pretty significant surgery, those are the types of things that we could all be doing, because I don't know, and maybe if you're there, you're at home or you're wherever you are and you don't have your shoes on, I encourage you right now just to stand up, try to stand on one foot and pay attention. Just look down if you can. You can hang on to something, but just stand on one foot. And I want you to look at all of the little movements that are happening in your ankle and your foot. Like take your shoe off and really look at it. You can do it later if you don't want to do it right now. But look at that. And those little bitty movements, that's what Karina was working on in her PT, in strengthening her ankle and getting those muscles strong so that perhaps in the future she can not sprain her ankle as much, right? Strengthening those muscles to give her, like she has hyper flexibility. Like I said, it's great if you're flexible, but if you're too flexible and you can't control it and you don't have the stabilizing muscles to keep it into place, to keep that mobility from being overextended, there's going to be problems there, right? Who's had hip? Has anybody gone through hip surgery of any kind?
Not
I
yet.
have.
Who said has?
Mary.
Mary, Miss Mary. I can't see everybody on here. So Miss Mary, tell me about your PT for your hip. Like what did they have you doing one side versus the other in order to strengthen your hip?
It was a long time ago. It was probably 20 years ago. So definitely working. It was my left hip, a total hip replacement. Definitely working that side of my body to make sure that I could just use it first of all, and then they would go to the right side. But it was a long time ago.
Yeah. So they didn't just have you strengthening one side; they had you strengthening both sides. And anybody know why that's important?
Balance.
Yeah, balance, the stability, the balance. If you're strengthening one side, yeah, of course she was strengthening one side because she had surgery on the one side. But if you don't do both, then of course you're going to be out of balance. And that's where all of this comes into play. And this stability work, like if you notice, everybody's got PT, like physical therapy stories on what they did. But who does this stuff after they stop going to physical therapy? Anybody? Probably nobody.
Nobody.
Right? Nobody does. Everybody gets done with PT and they're like, screw it. I don't have to do it anymore. Nobody's making me do it. but how beneficial is making sure that you're doing this stuff? It is the boring, not sexy, little bitty bullshit exercises and mobility and stability and all of the things that nobody ever wants to do, but are so very important in regular functional life and in our regular workouts. So this is all, the boring stuff, but it's probably more important than your freaking deep ass squats that you want to do. Because you can't squat really deep under control without hurting yourself if you don't have good stabilizing muscles throughout your body, in your ankles, in your knees, in your core, and core being not just your belly, but core all the way around, your back muscles. Like, you can't do big, strong, heavy lifting if you don't have the little bitty stabilizing muscles also firing. So stability, it probably, of all of this, is more helpful when it comes to functional movement.
Marianne,
Yeah.
I want to add to that because I've always been pretty flexible, right? And I played basketball for 20 years, but I never squatted until I retired and I got big. And I didn't realize I didn't have hip mobility. And when I got my hip mobility better, uh, I was able to sit all the way down in a squat, and that changed everything. The squat used to be my least favorite exercise, and now it's my favorite because my hips are unlocked.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're limited to range of motion because you haven't been working on that mobility and you're not flexible, let's say you have tight hamstrings all of the time. If you want to do, say, a kettlebell deadlift, you can't do a straight leg kettlebell deadlift if your hamstrings are too tight for you to even get down there to pick it up off the floor. You will have to modify the movement and do a squat or a bent knee deadlift, a regular deadlift, in order to do that. So you'll be very limited to what you can and cannot do based on your flexibility. And so working on all of that is super, super important. You can't leave one out of the other. So some common myths. Probably already talked about a couple of these. I'm just tired, I need to stretch more, right? The stretching more, like, this is really true. I see this in hamstrings all the time. So people always think that their hamstrings are tight. Oh, my hamstrings are tight. I can't bend over and I can't touch my toes. Like, how many of you can bend over and touch your toes? Straight legs, bend over, touch your toes. How many of you can't? I wish I could see everybody. I can't scroll and see everybody for some reason. I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to assume that somebody raised their hand, right? It's not necessarily that your hamstrings are too tight. It could be that your glutes are tight. It could be that your calves are tight. Your entire posterior chain being your lower back, your booty, your hamstrings, all of it, everything in the back, right? And so if any of that is lacking in mobility, like your hips, your glutes, your booty, that could be preventing you from touching your toes. It could also be your lower back. If you even have some upper back, like maybe you can't even hunch over because your upper back, your thoracic area is too tight. It's not necessarily that you're too tight. It's just that you haven't been doing those movements. And so those joints aren't ready to move in the way that you want them to move. And we have to practice that. It doesn't just come naturally, and we lose it over time, something that we have to consistently work on. Mobility work doesn't count as exercise. This is probably the really big one that I've heard not only whenever I was in the gym, I doing the CrossFit stuff, but even now, like, again, it's the non-sexy, boring stuff. Everybody wants to do cleans and jerks. Everybody wants to do heavy squats. Everybody wants to do deadlifts. But if your shit is too tight or your joints don't want to move, you are going to get injured trying to lift weight that is too heavy. It's bound to happen, and especially if we ignore it and we don't do it on a regular basis. Anybody have an experience of I wish I would have done such and such, and as a result, I got an injury.
Not yet.
When I was running a lot, my hips are hyper flexible, so I could never stretch them enough. Even though I'm tight now, I couldn't stretch them enough. And so I was running a lot because I couldn't stretching them enough, and I didn't concentrate on my legs like I should have. When there was an incident at a race I was in, and a person bent down, and I did the crossover to avoid hitting them, I ruptured my calf muscle. So I think if my calf, and if I had stretched it well, I wouldn't have had that injury.
Yeah, if you had, and that could and may not have even been that you had tight calves, right? It could have just been over time focusing and having in your running routine, in your practices, in your daily runs, if you had perhaps done some mobility work and some flexibility work every single time, it would not have resulted in the knots in your calves or whatever else happens to cause that particular injury. So these are all very, very important things to consider when we're doing repetitive movement. Tomas, if you jump out on the soccer field and you don't warm up and you don't stretch or you don't do any kind of mobility, what's going to happen to you or some of your players?
Bye-bye.
Yeah, and what's the most
You're
common
gone.
injury do you see on a soccer field?
I would say hamstring tears, most
Yeah,
likely.
hamstring tears. And you guys, I mean, it's just common knowledge that you must warm up properly, right? And we all know those athletes. We all know like an athlete, a professional athlete that has had those major injuries. And, sometimes it does just happen. You could be doing all of the right things and shit happens, right? That's going to be. But we can try to avoid them as much as possible by focusing on these things because we know them to be helpful. We know they help prevent injury in our regular everyday life and in our athletic lives or in the gym or whatnot. Ignoring them and saying mobility is not important, it doesn't even count. I don't want to do mobility. I've been hollered at several times, like this mobility stuff, this warm up stuff is stupid. I feel stupid. I don't want to do it. And I will lecture whoever that is till my eyes bleed because it's so, so important. And I know how boring it is. I know how silly it all feels, but it's super important to prevent injury.
Jumping jacks. I do not get the point of jumping jacks. I can do them until I'm blue in the face, but I do not understand them at all.
Who wants to help with this? Why would jumping jacks be a good warm-up exercise?
It's like a whole body workout. I mean, it loosens everything. You're moving your fingers, your toes, your legs, your arms, your back, your stomach, even your head is rolling it when you get to a certain point. It moves everything.
What else?
And also it moves everything as one unit. So it's like it's kind of teaching your body how to move properly as one single unit.
As in coordination is what I was gonna say.
Yep, coordination is another one. The other one's blood flow.
Yes, blood
Heart
flow.
rate.
Heart rate.
Yeah.
Get your
Blood
heart
flow.
rate
I've
up.
never heard that. I've never
Also
heard that.
opens your blood capillaries for more oxygen to get through. And one of the things a lot of people forget or don't know is you have a mesh wall over your muscles. If that's still tight and your muscles are loose, you're going to injure your muscle. So jumping jacks helps loosen that up as well so that your muscles can stretch.
Okay.
Yeah, so the warm up. What are you warming up? Right? You're warming up your muscles to make sure, and you warm up your muscles by blood flow. So when you do jumping jacks, your heart rate goes up. Everybody, most people have the fitness watches, right? Your heart rate goes up. You're now pumping blood faster through the muscles that you are using when you're doing those jumping jacks, whether you're doing them using your arms or you're stepping in and out, because lots of people can't do jumping jacks. Maybe they have ankle situation or a knee situation, but any modification of those in any movement that you're doing quick like that is going to get your heart rate going. Heart rate, blood flow, warmth, warm up. That's why is an effective warm up. If you don't like them, we don't have to do them, but we're going to do some sort of warm up because it's important to get your muscles warm before we start to move them. Right?
Well, I didn't understand them. So
well,
I wasn't.
Good. Now you got it.
Yeah. I got it.
And again, there's a lot of people that can't do jumping jacks, right? So we just modify them, substitute them out. There's not one single movement that is the end all, the holy grail of warm-ups, unless you talk to me about burpees.
A year and a half ago, I couldn't do them. But after BMT and having to do them over and over and over and over and over and over and over, repeated like a million times.
Yeah, I actually have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question. By a show of hands, how many of you all asked your coach advice on your workouts in your form? How many? Y'all can unmute and say me. I don't care. How many of y'all asked y'all coach about specific movements in your workout or the exercise? Right? Okay. How many of y'all actually ask about the warm up? None of y'all ask about the warm up, the meaning of it, what it's supposed to do.
I used to ask Jesse all the time about warm ups and mobility work and stuff like that.
What was your question to him?
It was basically how much warming up and how should I focus my warm ups, for whatever workouts that I'm going to be doing. And he was pretty good at guiding me through good warm ups.
So I'll give y'all exercise that I do for chest. 2 things I do for chest before I even do chest, and it has nothing to do with my chest. Is my legs and my back. So before I do legs, I do squat. Y'all know why I squat first? The majority of your free testosterone for men rests in your legs. So if you activate it, it's going to push it up, right? And then I do lat pull downs, real light, high volume. All my clients, I have them do the same thing, right? Even with squat, it's not a heavy squat because it puts blood in your back. So when you're on the bench, you don't move. It also increases your shoulder mobility, warms your shoulder up so you can push.
So I have had the question a lot of times, like what Eric is saying, like, why am I stretching this? Or why am I doing something with my arms when it's leg day? And that's exactly right. It's making sure that the stability that you need through some of the movement is there, and it still needs to be warm. So making sure that you're doing those warm-up movements, even though they may not make sense, you're still getting a huge benefit from doing those movements all the way through.
Yeah, the body as a whole. So one thing that is also useful, the first set, you can do it with 50% of the load that you're going to do. And basically the warm-up is giving the signals that the body is like going to do something from that resting mode. So get enough signals to the body that something is coming. So that's the big goal of the workout. Sorry, the warm-up, not the workout.
Yeah, so some real life examples here of, we've already been talking about a lot of them, but real life examples of each of these. So flexibility, bending over to tie your shoes or to pick up the laundry basket, and bending over, the flexibility is you being able to get down there without rounding your back in a weird way, or because your hamstrings aren't loose enough for you to be able to bend over, now you have to squat down in order to tie your shoes because you can't just bend over and do it. Without the flexibility, if you are flexible enough, you don't have to compensate by rounding your back. You compensate by rounding your back, and that increases your risk for strain and injury when you have muscles that aren't as flexible. Mobility example would be like walking up and down the stairs. Great if you can get your leg up, you know, you're taking the step up and you have the flexibility in your glutes and in your leg to do that. But if the mobility doesn't allow you to move forward through that joint movement, you're going to have pain. And again, you will overcompensate and change the way that you step. Maybe you change the way that your weight shifts on your feet. So you're on your heel now or your toe because that mobility just isn't there. Maybe it's mobility in your knee. So you don't walk the correct way up and down the stairs, flexible enough to do it, but the mobility is not there. So now you're compensating in a certain way through that joint. And then stability, we've already talked about this. If you need to carry your suitcase or a big heavy bag or your groceries on one side, you've got, you know, a thing of water on one side and a small grocery bag on the other side. If you're not stable, if you don't have that good core stability, you're going to lean and you're going to, you know, everybody's done that whole lean way over because something's really heavy on one side. I mean, those of you who are parents and you had the little baby carrier thing and you wrap your arm underneath the baby carrier and you've got the baby on one side, like, think back. Did you do a lot of that leaning over on one side because you maybe didn't have the core muscles necessary to walk in a straight line while you had a baby carrier on one side of your body? So all kinds of like very, very practical things come into play when we're talking about all of these things.
I see that.
How we use it in training, we already talked about warm-ups, including the mobility exercises to prepare your joints. If you got a squat, you're going to need to have your knees mobile. Your knees are going to be able to move through those range of motion. Eric said his hips, he has to work a little bit more on getting his hips warmed up so that his hips can move through that full range of motion. He can actually squat all the way down to that seated position and stand back up if his hips are mobile. If his hips are too tight or they're not quite ready to go, he's not going to be able to do that deep squat. It's going to be a shallow squat, or he's going to compensate in some way with his knees or with his back because he can't get into the position that he wants, right? Cooling down, cool down practices, those cool downs that you're doing after. Sometimes it's just walking. You're getting some extra steps in to bring your heart rate back down. Doing those cool down stretches as you are still warm, your stretches are more beneficial if your body is warm. Doing cold stretching isn't really super effective. It's very, very effective if you are warm first. That's why, you know, jumping jacks before stretching, or you doing your static stretching at the end of your workout after you've had all this blood flow going through your muscles and you're a little bit more warm. You're not cold trying to, if you think about a rubber band, if it's cold, it's not going to move as much. But if you hold it and you make it warm, it then becomes a little bit more pliable. Your ligaments and joints and muscles are the same way inside your body. Strength work, focused on building that stability. Those are the things that Karina had to do with her ankles, standing on one leg. When you guys practice the, you know, standing on your one foot, take a look at, like, video your ankle. Look at all that little bitty tiny movement that's happening in your ankle when you stand on one foot. That's the strength work that helps you make your ankle stronger so that you can, if you fall off of a curb or you trip over a crack in the concrete and you take a weird step, you're stable enough that you're not going to roll your ankle because your ankles are strong enough to handle a misstep like that. And then being consistent. Consistency over time, like small little workouts, small little training sessions, little stretches here and there, mobility work, stability work here and there, way more beneficial than long drawn out training sessions. It's great if you have time to do a long drawn out training session for mobility and stretching and all of that. But if you don't, it's okay. Making sure that you're fitting these little things in at least once a day can be very, very beneficial rather than these long workouts. All right, key takeaways. Better movement directly improves your quality of daily life. You can move through your daily life. You can carry uneven batch of groceries in and out from the car if you are stable and it's not going to hurt you to do so. You can get out of bed without hunched over and waiting until you have, enough movement to walk correctly, or enough warmth to walk correctly. You can get up from your chair, from your desk chair, from sitting all day at your desk job, and you don't have to, you immediately grab your back or your hips or whatever it might be. Small efforts add up. I will be sharing just a little 5-minute daily routine that you can do. I'll share that in the elite group. It's just something quick you can screenshot and do. It takes 5 minutes to do it. It's a little bit of each of these things. If there's nothing else that you do on the day, or you don't have your mobility stuff worked into your workout for that day, at least do this 5 minutes. Fit it in, like 5 minutes. Everybody's got 5 minutes to do a little bit of something. So I'll share that if you'd like to grab that. And just small efforts, doesn't have to be a big, long ordeal. Supports your health, supports long-term health. We know that knee replacements and hip replacements and all of those sometimes are necessary. We can try to avoid those as much as possible by working on these things now to prevent for future surgeries like that. So we can maybe prolong them and avoid some pain and angst if we work on it now, even though it's boring and not sexy. We want to be pain-free as long as we possibly can, and making sure like you can really improve your quality of life and live in a less painful way if you practice these things and you work on some of these things every single day. It's a game changer, and I really wish more people would believe me when I say that. And I, for the longest time, I'm guilty as well. For the longest time, I was like, that's boring. I really just want to jump in. I'll warm up on the first round of the workout. And I mean, I've been there too with injuries and recovering. And now that I focus on making sure that I do my figure 4 stretches and I make sure that my hips are good to go, it really is a game changer in making sure that I can do all of my stuff, whether I'm tired, sore from my previous workout, or whatever. All right, book of the month. Desk Bound. Kelly Starrett is a world-class range of motion mobility dude. He's got apps and all the things, that you can, of course, subscribe to and whatnot. I have a couple of his books. I chose this Desk Bound because a lot of us, I know a lot of my clients and a lot of the other coaches have clients who you sit at a desk all day. And this is practical ways to improve your daily mobility habits, how you sit, ergonomics. After COVID and everybody ended up going home and being home workers, like I was a remote worker for 20 years before I had my gym. And I did not take it seriously in my 20s how important ergonomics was, how important it was to make sure that your desk is set up properly and your computer and your screens and all of the things. I didn't take it seriously, and I ended up with a shoulder injury. And it literally, the only thing I changed was my desk and how I moved my mouse on my desk, and my pain went away. And I have ever since then been a believer. So when everybody came home during COVID and started working on their couches, sitting in their chairs with their laptops on their laps, literally on their laps, and working, and now we have all these neck injuries and all these headaches and migraines. That's all because you're sitting in ways that are not the right way. And one of the really big things in this book is making sure that your ergonomics are correct so that you are staying in alignment and your spine isn't, you're not in flexion all the way. And there's a lot of really good practical tips in this book. It's definitely not one that it's not an audio book that you'd want to do because there's a lot of visuals. So it's a good book. Kelly is a pretty awesome dude, has lots of really practical ways and and some not so practical ways. There's a lot of torture stuff that he does with foam rollers and stability balls and lacrosse balls and things like that to release tight stuff, but good stuff. And then last but not least, our client of the month is going to be Naomi. Naomi could not join us tonight because it is her anniversary and she's celebrating her anniversary. So, and she asked me to, give us a little smiley face on her pictures. So she has been doing awesome. She's down 16 pounds. You can see she didn't have a whole lot to go, but 16 pounds is pretty significant. 2.5 inches off of her waist, 5 inches off of her hips, and she's down 7% body fat. And the thing about Naomi is she has a very hectic life, like the rest of us. She travels a lot, spends a lot of time in her RV, and she does everything I ask her to do. She
Tell her I'm jealous.
just does what she's supposed to do. And as a result, she's seen really fantastic progress. The other thing is Naomi is at the age where it's difficult. We all know what that is. It's difficult to lose weight sometimes at this age, especially when you don't have a lot to lose. And metabolism reset takes a lot longer sometimes. And that's what had to happen. And so consistency and patience was the name of the game for Naomi in making sure that she was able to see progress. And it took a really long time to reset her metabolism, but she stuck with it and she stayed consistent. She persevered, and as her patience kept going, she was able to then start seeing some really fantastic progress. And even from this picture here in January, she's down another couple of pounds. So just do what your coaches are telling you to do, and you're going to be successful. Like, that's the easiest. Just turn your calendar green, do the things. Naomi is a perfect example of how that works.
Hey, Marianne, to piggyback
Yes,
off the book, the book of the month, another one that this will apply to outside of a desk and a laptop is being on your damn phone.
yeah.
Most people are on their phones like this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see people sitting up on their phone. They're either laying down, slouching, sitting on the toilet, or it's down in their lap, and their back is doing the same thing it's doing as the laptop in your lap.
Yeah.
So that can apply to any your iPads, tablets, all of that. Everybody does it.
Yep. Truck drivers I've seen a lot of, we call it winged scapulas, because they are constantly like this. And so they rotate out and they're forward. So it's really difficult for them to actually do regular functional movement and pull back. Like, say they're trying to do, a pull up or even just the lat pull. And their scapulas actually do not rotate in the same way as a normal person's because of that repetitive rotational movement that they have in their arms and how forward they are. Our whole lives, we are forward. So the reset, that posture reset, is important to do. Your chiropractors usually talk about posture resets all the time to counteract the effects that we have in living in this forward world where everything is in front of us and we're constantly in that flexion with our spines. So who's going to do their warm-up? Next
Who's going to
workout.
change their warm-ups? That's my question. Who's going to take warm-ups more
Stop
serious?
skipping their warm-ups.
Yeah.
I haven't skipped.
Good.
Burpees. Karina, I love burpees. You talk about the one movement that is the most effective full body cardio movement ever. The burpee. It's perfect.
It's the one thing that will absolutely put me in traction. No, thank you.